Okay, welcome OUAB guests. Tonight we are going to be demonstrating the preparation of some Euro-American themed items. We're going to start with a Mediterranean meatball. And for that, we're going to take a stainless steel bowl and we're going to crack in that bowl a whole egg. I believe in your meal kits, you've got a whole egg that's already been cracked for you. I encourage you to put it into a bowl and whisk it. While that's happening, you have a measure of oil on your tray, which is going to be about an ounce, otherwise a couple of tablespoons to heat up in a skillet of that olive oil. And with that, we're going to have the minced onions that have been provided to go into the skillet to start to saute. We don't want to get color on them, we just want to saute them so they become translucent. So I'm managing the heat and not putting the vegetables into the pan until you've got that pan reheated. Or heated to the point where you can hear the onions start to sizzle. While the onions are starting to sizzle and start to cook, I'm going to whisk that egg to break it up so it's a smooth and homogeneous state. And right behind that, I'm going to put in the herbs that are dry herbs. This basil, oregano, thyme, marjoram, which is basically the Italian herb blend that we see in recipes. I'm going to go right behind it with the chopped parsley. On your recipe, the parsley is designed to go into two applications. One is going to be for the ingredient in the meatball. The other one is going to be a garnish for the meatball. So be prepared for that. As the onions start to sweat and you start to get that nice smell of the onion, you're going to add in the chopped garlic and let that chopped garlic briefly sweat. To that egg mixture, we're going to put in the breadcrumbs that are going to be a binding agent to hold the meatball together. Between the egg and the breadcrumb, those are binding agents that are going to keep everything in check, so the meatball will maintain its round shape and cook nicely. Once that onion is cooked and it has a nice translucent appearance, we're going to allow that to cool down briefly. While that's cooling down, we're going to take the portion of ground meat, which what we have today is ground sirloin, and we're going to break that up in the pan to be able to get that to cook, to soften up. So best method to do that is by hand. You can do it with a spoon, but it's going to take a lot longer, and these hands are going to be the better method to be able to get all those ingredients worked in with that meat. So I would recommend you do the get the onions sauteed with the garlic first so that you can allow that onion and garlic mixture to cool down enough to touch so that you can at that point add it to this mixture. And then the ground meat gets dressed with the flavor of the onion. A little bit of milled salt and pepper are added to that. And then that gets mixed with the addition of some grated Parmesan cheese. Those are the main ingredients for that dish. And the last shot at blending all that together. You could certainly use a mixing machine, like a stand mixer with the bowl attachment and the paddle. That's up to you. To me, it's more things to wash. Plus, if you work the meat too hard in the mixer, it's going to get tough because you're going to work it too hard. A tray lined with some paper is ideal. You're going to portion scoop using this disher, which is you're going to get 30 of these to a quart. It's kind of a flat scoop. for all of the meatball mixture. And then you're just simply going to round them out into meatballs. And they're ready for the oven at that point. Those would get dropped in the oven to cook. And we normally cook them to about 155-degree internal temperature. And that's the finish of the meatball. I'm going to move on with the pork tenderloin dish that you have on your trays in your home kit. And for that, we're going to season the meat. This is a beef tenderloin au poivre by name. And au poivre is a French term with pepper. And sometimes we'll use green peppercorns. We'll do a combination of green peppercorns and black peppercorns. Today we're doing black peppercorns. So I'm going to take those medallions, again on lined paper tray, just to keep things neat and sanitary. There's grains that run through the pork. The grains are going to be kind of like texture in the pork. You want to be able to flatten that out so that the grains are on the sides and not on the surface itself. That's the method in which we're going to cook those. So the pork lays out nice and flat. You've got a measure of coarse kosher salt and some cracked black pepper. It's going to get distributed onto those pieces of pork. I'm going to hit it on both sides so that they're nicely seasoned. And if the pork is thick, do your best to press it down so that they cook more evenly in the skillet. To that skillet, I'm going to add some oil, and you can hear the sound of the oil in the skillet very quickly, being able to identify that it's hot enough. It's almost at the smoking point, so then when we put the pork in there, it's going to pretty much immediately start to sear. It's a matter of controlling the heat so you have the pork at the right temperature. So you want to have this golden brown caramelization of the pork occur during that cooking process. The pork dish has a variety of ingredients that are going to allow that to cook. Some of you have the oil in this container in your home meal kit. A portion of it you're going to use to be able to saute the pork. The other portion you're going to use to rehydrate your pasta noodle. And that pasta noodle we have today is going to be a fettuccine. So all we want to do is basically reheat it in some boiling salted water, and you're going to strain it through a strainer to finish it off. You have heavy cream, a white wine, and some chopped parsley are the finishing ingredients for this dish. As that pork starts to pick up some color, you can turn them over to let them finish cooking. If you have a plate in your cabinet, you can take these pieces of pork that are browned on both sides and let them rest. They're going to finish cooking in the pan sauce that we're going to create. So getting them nice and golden on both sides is key. In a separate skillet, you're going to take the marinara sauce that you have, and we're going to add that to the skillet, and we're just simply going to allow that to reheat. And those meatballs are going to finish in this tomato sauce, pick up some flavor, and make those meatballs accented with the flavor of sweet basil. So on your trays you have, in your kit you have some stems of sweet basil. I saved one of the tops of the sweet basil simply to garnish with for the visual appeal and the reward of a beautiful dish. The other parts of that basil I saved, and we're just going to hand tear them. So I typically take those pieces of basil leaf, put them in a stack, and just simply hand tear them into small pieces and I'll put those in the tomato sauce, whether the sauce is an arrabbiata or just a simple tomato sauce or a marinara like this. That nice, fresh, bright flavor of freshly torn sweet basil is ideal. Do I want to chop it? Not especially, because chopping it with a knife generally bruises the basil and it has a negative effect on the appearance of the basil. So that's why we opt out to tear that basil as we're getting ready to use it. The pork has got a nice golden color on both sides, and I'm going to take it out of the pan, either put it on a plate, someplace where I can hold it. Pork you don't want to cook like perhaps some old school preparations were, where they cook pork till it's dry and all the moisture's been exhausted from it. It's really going to ruin it. You've got a beautiful pork tenderloin here that's going to eat like butter if it's properly cooked and not overcooked. So please be conscientious of that as you move forward. In that same skillet, under those same heat conditions, we're going to add white wine and allow that to reduce. I want you to use some caution as you're adding that white wine. If you're at home or even on your stove tops, anywhere where there's an open flame, it's very easy to allow that alcohol to burn and to be able to flare up. You want to be conscientious of that. So we have the peppercorns already involved in the flavor of the skillet as it's being seasoned through that process. I'm going to allow that red wine to reduce a bit. Meatballs should be done. Take those out of the oven. If there's any amount of fat that's residual on the tray, feel free to take that fat off by draining it, because the fat you do not want to transfer into your tomato sauce. You want it to be just your meatballs and that nice refined sauce. The fettuccine for my pork dish, I'm going to put it into the water. It's already blanched, so all I want to do is just kind of reheat it. What I refer to as retherming the pasta. As I get this white wine reduced down to where it's very small amount left, I'm going to put in the heavy cream and allow that cream to heat up. With that cream, I'm going to put in the majority of the parsley and save a little bit back for accent garnish. As that's cooking, I'm going to return the pork to that skillet and allow it to finish off as that cream and wine mixture reduce. So we're developing ourselves a little pan sauce. Some of those drippings that came from that pork are really quite good. Sort of like nectar of the gods. You want to keep it. It's got a lot of flavor. Once we've applied a slow simmer to those noodles, simply drain them off. And we'll hold those off to the side. And I'm going to refresh a little bit of water, and I'm going to reheat the vegetables in. I'll let those pieces of pork simmer. Reduce the heat of your skillet briefly so you don't reduce the cream too far. You want it to be a little bit saucy, and you can move those pieces of pork around in that sauce so that they move. The vegetables that we have today are a French bean with some julienne red bell pepper. Again, I'm just going to rehydrate those, kind of re-warm them back up. I'm going to drain those off. A little bit of the oil that I had from the tray is going to go into the skillet to be able to season those vegetables with. A little salt and milled pepper to get, whoops, sorry. A little milled pepper to be able to season that skillet with. Pork is nice and tender. For the pasta, drain off any excess water. A little bit of the oil. to season those. Some milled salt and pepper. You may have a little bit of salt from the water that the pasta was cooked in. A little bit to finish. And then some parsley to finish that pasta noodle off with, so that they're seasoned. So now we have most of our ingredients staged. We have the nice beautiful pork. We have the noodles. We have our vegetable of the day. Drain the water off after we just brought them to a slow simmer. They don't have to get too crazy hot because they're already blanched and shocked. Meatballs are reheating. Vegetables go into the skillet with the oil and the salt and pepper, just to season them up, get them some flavor, and get them nice and hot. One more time on this saucepan. You're going to use it a couple, 3 times. If you're at home, you've got a few saucepans, feel free to use all 3 of them. Should be able to heat up all these ingredients so they all go pretty quick. You're going to have a portion of penne pasta. We're just going to reheat that. Again, it's already blanched off as well, so it doesn't take long for that to come back to reheat. So for the fettuccine, to finish that dish off, I'm going to plate it on a round plate. I'm going to take some of the fettuccine and I'll lay it out pretty much in the center of the dish. And to that, I will take a few pork medallions and pretty much lay them nicely on top of the fettuccine. And then with your spoon you have on your trays that you have in your list of equipment to work with, dress those pork medallions with some of the pan sauce that you have. You have 3 per person. And then you're going to take your vegetable that you had made, re-blanched in advance, and you're just reheating them, and serve that on the side of the dish. Red bell pepper and French beans are a nice application for this dish. And that's the pork dish, pork tenderloin au poivre. Finish off the meatballs. They're simmering in the sauce. Again, we want to cook those to 155 degrees in the center and allow that sauce with the fresh basil to kind of saturate and coat those meatballs as they're cooking. And we're going to dish that up with the penne pasta. Penne pasta comes back to a boil just briefly to make it tender again. They're already blanched al dente. Drain the water off of those. Because it's a tubular pasta, it's a good idea to get all the water off of the penne so you don't have any interruption to your marinara sauce. Get that water off of there, and this can go back right into that saucepan that you cooked them in. And then that can just briefly be re-seasoned with some salt and milled black pepper. And those can just get a touch of oil. You have plenty on your trays to work with or in your meal kit. And that pasta will go into the bowl for a little family style look of that dish. And then we're going to accent the penne pasta with the meatballs. Make sure that we get plenty of sauce on the meatballs so that those can be enjoyed. And that sauce can be moved around in the bowl for enjoying that pasta with. Make sure you get some of the sauce over the top of the meatballs. a good mix to work with. And then we're going to finish the dish with some grated Parmesan cheese, which you have two separate units for that Parmesan. One goes in the meatball, one goes on top of the meatball. You have some freshly chopped parsley to accent the dish off with. And then I had mentioned about saving the basil top for the finish of the dish so that that can be a nice accent garnish to finish that off. So you have a Mediterranean meatball with penne pasta and a marinara sauce and the pork tenderloin au poivre. Enjoy.